Hi, I'm Paul Hudson, CEO of FlexMR, and today I'm going to talk on a very interesting topic, the four futures of insight activation. I just want to start by talking about that word activation. It's a word that has begun to creep into our market research vocabulary quite a lot in recent years. So the dictionary definition of activation is to cause function, the process of making something operative, or in physics, to excite or to react something. And there you see why it's crept into our vocabulary quite a lot. Market research is no longer, or never was really, just about the process of collecting data. It has to also be about the process of activating or making that research data operative, to borrow that definition. And through that, we make sure an action or a decision is taken within the business, and therefore the market research becomes more valuable. So let's look at activation in a bit more detail. Today I'm going to paint four divergent and simultaneous futures. What do I mean by that? Well, these are four different paths the future will take, we believe, for activation. Some of these things we can see already happening in the marketplace today, and others are more predictions of what are likely to become future trends in the industry. So the first future I want to talk about is the research software becomes more collaborative. This is something that we can begin to see happening, but it's something that I think is going to be more prevalent in future years, especially in the technology sector of the market research industry. The second future is creative reporting. And we believe those techniques for creative reporting, those tactics, are likely to skyrocket in coming years. We can already see this happening in the industry today. We've got a poll up on LinkedIn at the moment, which is about reporting techniques that tend to engage stakeholders more. And we can already see the variety of those beginning to play out. More on that in a minute. Future three is about data and democratization. And we believe that data will have to be democratized in more practical and more engaging ways in the future too. And again, I think this is more of a prediction, really. You can begin to see happening, the demand for it happening, but I think talking about it in this way is very, very powerful. And that's that if we begin to embrace democratization, think about ways we can democratize data more within businesses, in more practical, engaging ways, what we will simultaneously see is more activation of that insight. It's another process of engagement. And future four is around technology again, and why technology landscapes will begin to consolidate. Again, we can begin to see this, but again, it's a trend that I think we're going to see more of. And today we'll talk about the reasons why that is at play and why we think that will help activation and why we think that's going to continue to expand. So back to the future, number one, collaboration. So here, research software is already becoming more collaborative, and it's going to integrate workflows between users. So I think making research software more collaborative in the future will only aid to help insight activation and to engage in that activation. So let's first look at the landscape of software development in the industry. Over years, we've seen it go through stages. So there's four simple stages here. First of all, early 90s, research software was developed and invented, desktop-based software that could help generate and analyze data more accurately. We've then moved into the cloud, more web-based applications, and these have offered greater scale and availability of participants than other methods. And that's really the phase that has expanded in the last couple of years, especially. And now we're moving into the next stage, the third stage of that, where online research needs to be simple enough for others, for anyone, not just researchers, to be able to use. And that's something really we see happening at the moment, a demand for better and improved UI. We ourselves are currently overhauling our survey tool to make it much more engaging and easier to use for non-researchers alike. And then I think what we're moving into in the next decade is software where researchers and non-researchers should be able to collaborate together in that online space. So taking that online space a little bit further and making it a little bit more collaborative. And that could be in a variety of different ways. Because it can be a variety of different ways, let's look at the different types of collaboration software available at the moment. So in different industries, we've got knowledge management systems and we've got project management systems. And project management systems especially have come a long way in recent years. Trello is one that I use a lot. There'll be other ones, a Basecamp that other people will have come across, a Microsoft project, for example. Knowledge management systems, again, we see those burgeoning at the moment in other industries and beginning to come into our industry as well. Very, very distinct styles of collaboration in the two, but that both really do show that demand for collaboration exists. So what does that mean for us in our industry? Well, one example we see, for example, and this is something we're doing in our own development team, trying to accelerate this future by making our platform and building a tool in our platform that allows multiple different data types to be brought together in a single space and then shared with added collaboration features in there as well. So step one for us is about being able to bring together different data types from different places. For example, simplistically, qual and quant, being able to take video output and chart output and report it together. And make that a little bit more collaborative to make it easier to share and collaborate outside of a debrief. So we'll go beyond just those sharing features and then add communication features to enable that dialogue to continue. So after a debrief, maybe the collaboration dialogue can continue around some key insights that have been brought out of that debrief. I think that's very important to make sure that the data continues to be used and the dialogue around it continues to be used. And ultimately then to also incorporate and integrate workflows into the help to actually help drive that action and help drive that activation even further, maybe setting actions, maybe following up actions, maybe setting alerts, for example, if those reports are discussed further. Then we move into feature 2, which is about creative reporting. And this is the one, if you remember, I think we already can see and recognize in our own research flows. So this is about reporting formats and they'll become more diverse in order and they'll become better at engaging stakeholders. I think this diagram really does help sum this up. At the bottom, it's a pyramid really. And if at the bottom we look at the early stages of methods for making creative reporting, like infographics, dashboards, explainer video, interactive data. All of those use visual interest as a way of bolstering engagement and bolstering interest amongst stakeholders. The next technique, next group of techniques, should I say rather, is about storytelling, immersion sessions, workshops, collaboration, exercises. And all of those are using a mixture of interactivity, a bit of shock to create an emotional impact. The lower level, the bottom layer, those infographics, dashboards, they don't really create an emotional impact. What they're just using is visual interest, whereas second layer uses more emotion. The third way is using out-of-the-box reporting styles to interrupt daily life. So video, advertising campaigns, that kind of thing. Again, very, very simple thing we see a lot at the moment is using video, vox pops, video output, video clips as a way of just very quickly creating an output that can create an interrupts stakeholder with that emotion, grabs their attention. And combining a mixture of those first three levels is also a good way of moving forward, rather than just one layer. We'll begin to see more integration between those three layers. And then at the very top, we've got experimental reporting formats to keep stakeholders engaged for longer. All of the other three are very good at grabbing attention. They're not necessarily good at keeping attention. And that's where we've been experimenting more recently too. So we set ourselves a challenge of making a creative output that was also agile in field and could create an engagement over a longer period of time. And we did that through creating artworks. We did it in a campaign called Insiders Art, which has just come to an end. And the first phase is fielding research in an agile way, online in an online qualitative discussion board. Second phase is distilling those themes in a quick sort of Scrum-based analysis method. And then phase 3 of that is creating a variety, 2 or 3 drafts of different styles of artwork. But really it's about using style of art to engage the audience. And here's an example of that creative output. It's a creative image. We really drawing on that power of a picture speaks 1,000 words really here. And what you're doing is engaging the stakeholder through the format, through the method, through the medium. Look into that one. This is about the high street and retail. And you can see instantly in that picture that we've got a grey side of the high street and a happy sort of more colour version of the high street. And that shows the dichotomy at play in retail at the moment between the burgeoning online place and the challenge that creates on the actual high street itself. And it also brings about the element of customer experience, which makes the difference. Parts of that high street are doing very, very well. Some high streets in busy cities are really flourishing, whereas other high streets in smaller towns are doing less well. To report this artwork, the artwork itself is engaging the viewer. It's creating a debate with the viewer, but also the format. We've put it on a postcard. A physical postcard was the idea here, so that we could share it with stakeholders, possibly after a debrief, share it around stakeholders, create debate in the organisation, create discussion with stakeholders, and also make it last so that it sticks with us in the business longer than just a short debrief session would. That's really borrowing on all of the techniques we just spoke to on that pyramid. It's visual interesting. It creates debate, so it's got emotion in there, and we're trying to create collaboration and discussion with stakeholders through it, and we're also trying to extend that period to which that discussion takes place. So all of these things together, you can see sum up to a trend, a bigger trend in creative reporting styles that I think is only going to increase and skyrocket, as we said at the beginning. This is a trend that's here to stay, and it's one that's been proved to work by using different techniques, experimenting with different techniques. We will engage stakeholders more and therefore increase activation with insight. So creative reporting is our future too. Moving into future 3. This is a particularly interesting one for me. I think this is one that's going to increase in the next few years. Democratized data, permission-based data is going to become more accessible. It's already becoming more accessible. Stakeholders are used to having access to data, not just analytics data. They're also getting used to making it easy to get to consumer data. And because of that, we see a changing dynamic in the market research industry, where traditionally stakeholders would come and ask for a project. Now that creates more on demand. They expect quicker access, and they also expect access. They feel more confident and comfortable with data, even if some of us don't think they understand the process of market research. So let's start this section just talking about that process of market research. This is the process that we all go through as researchers. Collect data, analyze data, quality check the data, report the data, and then distribute it across our stakeholder groups. It's quite an involved process, which is why research has been criticized over recent years for not being agile enough. What do we mean by democratization? Well, first of all, on the left-hand side, the collection of data really matters. Democratized data, we must first have a relevant information that can be collected, organized, and stored. And on the right-hand side of that diagram, we must be able to distribute that collected data. Collected data must be actively, responsibly, and effectively shared. Some keywords in there. We've got to be able to share it. We've also got to have confidence that it can be actively shared and that we can do that sharing in a responsible way. Big word in the middle, democratization. How do you move from that collection to that distribution and make that access? Democratization really is about making that data tangible, making it easy to understand, and critically, making it available to as many individuals within an organization as possible. We don't just collect it, we don't just share it, we have to actively embrace democratizing it, increasing the access to that data. Now, there are many ways we could all answer that for ourselves, many ways you could choose to try and democratize it. So let's just think about some of those. Going back to our process of market research, the first step is to challenge ourselves to think about where on this process we should delegate and democratize data. Number one, we could delegate the collection. We could actually delegate out the collection method itself and make that available to certain people. Number two, we could delegate access to the analysis. So we keep control of the collection and the quality control, but we make available some of the analysis to allow stakeholders to play with that data. On the right-hand side, it could just be about sharing it, making more of that data readily available after a debrief. Or it could be a step in for that. It could be we've taken control of the collection, the analysis, and the quality control, but we share more reporting back to those other futures we've discussed with more collaboration around the reporting. To be responsible about it, I would always think there should be an oversight in the middle. And that's where us as researchers should never really be out of control. It should always be responsible, correct quality control processes, be that checking the quality of the data, be that checking the quality of the collection, the quality of the analysis, or the quality of the reporting. But it should always be some kind of oversight if that democratization is to be effective and responsible. Final diagram on this trend, on this future, where the insight team sit at the middle of all of these sources of data on the left-hand side and all of the stakeholders across the organization on the right. And really, it's just making the point that all of that data should flow through an insight team where there should be active control of the consumer, active control of their data, active control of the process of that. Otherwise, we are at risk of letting go not just quality, but of data privacy as well. And really, the insight team should be that process, that conduit through all of which that flows. But thinking about the process of democratization really matters. But I do think Future 3 is one that is here to stay, is one that we should all try to embrace. And when we embrace it, we have to think about what process works best for us. There isn't just one process, just like there isn't just one style of reporting. Final future, consolidation. We've seen explosive growth in technology. Niche research software has become available. And I think in the future, this is going to see more consolidation into certain powerhouses. As any industry reaches the end of its growth phase, it enters what's called a shakeout. On the left-hand side, you see this typical maturity diagram that we often see. And a shakeout is a stage effectively when that growth cycle starts to slow and we see greater mergers and acquisition. We have seen a lot of merger and acquisition in the research industry over the last 12 to 18, 24 months or so. But this could actually be a good thing for stakeholder engagement and activation. More platforms and technologies and outputs require more resource than ever and more finance to invest and manage. I think this is something that I've begun to pick up a lot in conversations recently, with all of us citing time challenges from both clients and agencies, availability of data becoming overpowering to us, and also cost-related challenges. We see the driver behind all of this merger element, because effectively trying to keep pace, trying to juggle all of the things we've been talking about, be it collection, analysis, or sharing of data, across a number of platforms in a fragmented marketplace that's constantly changing, becomes a challenge in itself. And as that challenge in itself grows, I think we'll see this demand for consolidation to work. Even if that means through consolidation, we have to accept that we can't have everything we need, and we certainly start making compromises and choices. I think that will happen. We'll start to make those compromises and choices in order to see more efficient processes and efficient ways of working. Put simply, this slide sums it up. On the left, we've got multiple software systems, each gathering different data points, and each one has its own unique UI, way of working, way of engaging with it. And as that consolidates, on the right-hand side, you see less of them. That requires less system, less time, less investment, reductions and efficiencies all over the place. And as that happens, it becomes not just easier for us to manage, but easier for stakeholders to engage with. Some examples of consolidation that we see and will see more of. Qual and quant, for example, managing collection of different data types in a single space has already become popular and will become more popular. Qual data is a different data type to quant. Quant is closed questions, qual is open. We've got text data, we've got video data in qual. It's all a little bit messy. Different data becomes a challenge in itself, but it becomes easier to deal with when it's in one platform. Collection and reporting, trying to merge those two processes more, is another way of consolidating it, so that the sharing and reporting is integrated with the collection element. If you have to take from collection into reporting, adds a step. And finally, centralized data protection. Essentially, the fewer places you put data, the less management you've got to keep over it. So essentially, there is a driver there for GDPR reasons to try to consolidate your consumer customer data. So that's the fourth future. We've seen four futures today in the presentation. What's my final word, my final conclusion on the topic of activation? I've got two for you. One is summed up beautifully in this quote by Maria Twigg, my research director. Activating insight will always be a challenge. But for it to be effective, the delivery format must fit a company's culture while standing out enough to be noticed. The more attention we give it, the better we'll become. Essentially, that's what we see happening already and see more of in these four futures. Activation is a word that's entered our vocabulary. It's going to stay there. And there are increasing ways that you can try and make insight more activated in your organization. All of those four trends, four futures, can help do that, be it reporting, be it democratization, be it consolidation of data. All of them can help. Is the future right? Of course it is. Whilst we've got brands, clients, agencies all pushing the boundaries of insight activation, developing collaborative software tools, creating action-orientated playbooks, or trialing experimental reporting methods. These are all things that we're doing today, being asked about by our clients to push on with. In the last 18 months alone, we've started the design of those collaborative tools. We've increased sharing of data on our platforms. We started encouraging clients to create playbooks to help promote insight and activate it. And we've been trialing those inside and out experimental reporting methods to find ways of engaging stakeholders more. As long as we are all willing and able to push in those directions, then activation is going to increase and improve and embed insight in decision making further in the future. Thank you very much.